everyone. Welcome to the InDesign Basics webinar. We're going to get started about 2 minutes after the hour just to give people time to join. For anyone just joining, we're going to get started in about 1 more minute. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Adobe Indesign Basics webinar. My name is Libby Schlosser, so I'll just start out by introducing myself. I am a web designer or user experience designer for Gallup here in Omaha. In regards to this webinar today, I use InDesign pretty regularly for work. Primarily, I use it to create static as well as dynamic reports. So static reports being a one-off report, the content stays the same, or a dynamic report, set up the layout, and then the developers put it together so that way it can be generated online with user inputted data. I also use InDesign for fun. I use it to create invitations and flyers for family and friends on a regular basis. So I enjoy using it. It's a fun software to learn. Kind of complicated, but still very fun and useful. So today, the goal of the day. So in the next hour, hopefully you will learn what design tool is best to suit your specific design need. Hopefully you'll learn how to understand and create an InDesign document, a basic knowledge of the tools, and you'll be able to create a layout with text, images, and shapes. The plan for tonight is to go over what is InDesign, what is it used for, when to use InDesign over Photoshop or Illustrator, who uses InDesign, and then we'll dive into a demo. So what is InDesign? InDesign is a desktop software that creates layouts, layouts and page designs. It's mainly used for print items, but also e-publications or interactive PDFs. You'll usually see a lot of the items you'll see that were created in InDesign are newspapers, magazines, books, posters, flyers, etc. Like I said, it's also used for interactive PDFs that you'll see, as well as some resume creation. Why InDesign over Photoshop or Illustrator? Now, I don't want to get too in the weeds with Photoshop and Illustrator with why using one or the other, but I'll just kind of go over the basic functions of them. Photoshop is a raster image editor. It's pixel-based, and it's primarily used to primarily used to edit images, but it can also be used for a lot of digital paintings that has great brush libraries. Illustrator is a vector graphics editor. It's vector-based, which means paths. It's used oftentimes to create logos as well as iconography. So a lot of those logos are created with shapes and text, and then the text is kind of created into lines and shapes. And then there's InDesign. InDesign is a desktop publisher. It handles multi-page documents. It's great for handling a lot of text and image control. You can still do some of the functions from Illustrator and Photoshop in InDesign, specifically creating shapes and paths. And then you can also bring in images from Photoshop and house them in the document, and then still edit them in Photoshop or edit your logo in Illustrator. Who uses InDesign? It's pretty much become an industry standard across the board. It's been around for 21 years, since 1999. National Geographic uses it. I've seen some of their interactive PDFs. Also Condé Nast, which is a larger owner of a lot of magazines such as Vogue, Wired, Home and Garden, along with a lot of other magazines and e-publications, or just publications in general. So now that we did a quick overview of InDesign, we're gonna go into a demo. And just to start off with, we have about 8 attendees today. I want to say, like, if there's anything that you're struggling with or questions you want to ask, feel free to do that in the chat or the Q&A, and then I'll try to answer them as we go along, or if I didn't get to it, I'll answer them at the end. So to get started, we're going to open up a new InDesign document, and then you can see that there's document or a book here. We're just going to primarily focus on the document today. This is your new document dialog box. As you can see, there's several tabs up here. You have your recent dialog, your recent items that you created or setups for. I primarily just create new every time I use it. And then you can also save things that you use a lot. So if you are, I see that there's a question, is a book a series of pages for a booklet? You can also do a series of pages in a document as well. It's not just a single page. And I'll dive into that in a moment. And then, so you can save presets as well. You can find typical print page setup, so letter, legal, tabloid, some web templates. So over on this right side is your typical setup window. So if I wanted to say we are going to create a poster today, the units in InDesign default to picas, but you can do whatever you're most comfortable in. I like to use inches. And then, so I do want to make this poster 16 by 20. You can also adjust your orientation down here. So what I want to show you is, if you check this preview button, it lays out the document behind you, so you can kind of see how your document is being created as you go. So I'm going to adjust it to being that orientation, and then you can see I already have 4 pages here, and this will kind of answer your series of pages for a booklet question. Right now, facing pages is not checked, so they're each one document in a row, but if you add facing pages, you can see that your odd pages are set up, your pages are kind of set up like that booklet structure. Your odd pages are on the right, while your even pages are on the left. So first, second, third, fourth. And then you can adjust whatever starting number you're on. And then you can also, for design purposes, a lot of people like to design on a column format. It's really great to make sure you have like a very crisp and clean layout, so that way there's structure to it. So this is 3 columns, and then the space in between the columns is known as a gutter. It just gives you a little extra space, so that way things aren't stacking up right on top of each other. Or if you wanted to plan for a document that had folds in it, you could fold within those gutters, and it gives you room for it. The next thing in your dialog box is going to be margins, which are very similar to Microsoft Word. Most documents will have a 1/2 inch margin. set in there, and that just kind of gives you some extra room for printing. Most printers only print with will print with a 4-inch margin. So if you're printing from home or a work computer, you might notice that when you try to print something with a full bleed, there is this white border around the side. And that's because the printer can't print full bleed. And so you have to kind of prepare for your layout to have that white border, or plan ahead of time that you want to print with a full bleed. And oftentimes that means that you're going to have to adjust your page size to be able to crop it, cut the document down to have that full bleed. Some printers do print with the full bleed, but not all. So when you're setting up a document to have a full bleed, you'll want to set up guidelines so that way there's a little extra, I keep saying bleed, but bleed, so that way you can have a clear cut line. And if you don't set that up, you risk when you cut it having that thin white line. So this allows you a little extra color or image to overhang, so that way you get a really crisp, clean edge. Now we're going to go ahead and create our document. I'll just run through very simple what the tools are. Right upper hand corner is your kind of layout. It's typically I use essentials, and it's everything you need to set up a basic layout. You can also go to advanced, which adds in some more functionality up on the top, but we'll stick to essentials today. Over here in this panel, you can see all of your pages. You can add pages down here, delete pages. So if I click add, it adds a page to the document. You also have master pages. So if you want to set page numbers or a header or footer on the page, you can do that in your masters and apply master pages to sets of documents in here. This is your properties panel. So if you're adjusting any shape, text, you'll mainly do that in the properties. Over on the left is your tools. This is your whole toolbar. So up here is your selection tool. Sure, I can talk a little bit more about the master pages. I can just set one up really quickly. So if you double click on master, you can, and this is kind of diving into a little bit more items for text, but if I wanted to say, I want this to be a header. And again, so properties, this allows you to change. I just want to make sure you guys can see this. And then this can be over here. Then this can be footer. You can apply it so that way we'll go to pages, and because now this is master A is on every page, it is then you cannot edit what is in these masters on this page. They're fixed there on this page unless you were to change your master or disable your master. Does that kind of clarify things a little bit more on masters, or do you want me to dive into it more? Great. So going back, this is your selection tool, and I just kind of want to touch on what you can do with your selection tool. Down here is your shape tool. This is rectangle. If you click and hold, you can you have the option to do an ellipse or a circle or a polygon tool. Create the shape. If you go back to your properties, you can see that right now it has no fill or no stroke. So double click and now it has a fill. And so if you go to your selection tool, this is how you move it around. You can also transform it and change the size. You can use your corner and that brings it up there. And then so I'll also just go ahead and create an ellipse. Oopsies. What I'm doing is I'm holding down Option, or on a PC, I believe it is Alt, And then that will just fix the corners, that way it's all the same size. And if you don't do that, you can kind of, the shapes can get a little out of. So this just kind of constrains them to stay fixed. Same thing, I'll change the color. And then also the polygon tool. So the polygon tool, you click and then it gives you a set width and height. So if I change those to being 5, I want to have 5 sides. Oops. And then you now have a pentagon. Same thing. So we'll add a color to it. Make this one green. There it goes. And then, so doing that, I want to go into the direct select tool. This allows you to go in and manipulate things a lot more closely than you would be able to just with using the selection tool. The direct select tool allows you to select specific points and then move them around. So if I went in here, I could select right here, and then you can adjust your shapes as needed. Same thing. So it just gives you a little bit more manipulation that you can do. Not that I'm aware of. I think that's mainly for tracing an image. It's mainly just in Illustrator, but you can bring in images that you have traced in Illustrator and add them here, and then still being able to edit them in Illustrator, which I'll dive into a little bit more later. So, and then that's the direct select tool. I want to touch on the text tool over here. So in order to add text to a page, you'll take this and then create a text box. So if I just wanted this to say title, I could do that. And then again, over here, your properties where you can change to be whatever font, and then weight, and then size. We're just gonna make this bigger so you can see it. And then that's the main one. So if we just make this a quick title, I double click down on this corner so that way it constrained to whatever the content was there. So that way it's a little bit easier to manage. So make this the title, and then we add another text box. We can then make a paragraph. And if you don't know what you're saying, what to type, and you're just laying out a page, InDesign has the great tool where you can fill with placeholder text. So then it all appears there. And it's just lorem ipsum, which is a Latin filler text. And then, so we're gonna change this to Helvetica regular and change the size to be 18. So when you do that, the text box stays the same size, but the text actually will then, the text box stays the same size, but you lose some of the copy in there. So say I wanted to add a lovely image that we have here, and then add the text box below. So if I wanted to continue this text box, I could double click on where the red was. That gives you, it's kind of like an error that says you can't view some of your copy. And then you add it down here. And then that actually will let you manage your copy a lot easier. So there's still some more, and I'll add it over here. So that finishes it. But say I removed a few sentences up here, it then trims this down so that way you can manage it there. But if I shorten this, it then wraps it down. So all of those text boxes are linked, so that way you can easily manage your copy as you see fit. So it's really great tool to handle long paragraphs or columns that have images in between them and so forth. In order to change I'll just dive into some of the text functionalities and what you can change. In order to change your text color, so if you see here, I've clicked on the text box, but that's just the box functionality. So if I click here, it only changes the box color. And in order to change the text color, you have to highlight it all, and then you can go ahead and change it. So we'll just make this a darker blue. And then just to dive into some of the other features that are here, you can easily make it all caps. And then, so right click, double click on that corner to expand, or small caps. You can even do, so if I said title 8, just to show you how you can do superscript. Very easily, and there's even some keyboard shortcuts for that that you can utilize. So again, just some others that you can go ahead and see. And then down here, similar to Microsoft Word, you can adjust your paragraph, so centered, left, right, some other justified options. You can also adjust your indents to the side. So if I only wanted this section to be indented a little bit, but it's still right aligned, you can do that. So that is the type tool. One other piece of type tool that's kind of fun is that you can type on a path in InDesign. So if you click here and then go, so now it's there, and I'm just going to do the same thing as fill with placeholder text that it wraps all the way around and make it a little bit larger. So now you can see that you can wrap text all the way around. And then the next tool I want to go over is the eyedropper tool. It works the same way as it would in Illustrator and Photoshop, as it can change the colors of things that you grab. So changing this shape to be from pink, this green to pink, you can do that. But it's also really great for text. So if I wanted this whole paragraph to be this, you just grab that and you can see that it copied text because of the T on the icon. And then down here, if you highlight, everything in that paragraph that you highlighted will change. And then this did not because it was not highlighted. So the eyedropper tool in InDesign is really useful for copying text to be what you're looking for. So then I do have a document of something I quickly created as a demo. It's just a quick poster that I created. And then this will allow me to kind of go into a little bit more of the ability to import images as well as things linking into InDesign. Yes, that's a great question. Is there a way to view without guidelines? I'll show on here. So here you can see all of those guides. In order to quickly do that, I just click W and then they go away. And then same thing for, you can do a Shift W and then that does a presentation mode. And then if you wanted to not have that black background, you could do click W again and it becomes white, G for gray, and then B for black. Okay, and then, so I just kind of want to go over what we have going on here. I have a couple of, this is an 8-column grid that I kind of utilize with the shapes. It's not completely 2 grid, but it works. So this is just a rectangle and then this rectangle has some curves in it. We have some linked images and icons down here that I'll get into in a minute. And then this is not a linked image. It was actually just copied and pasted straight from Illustrator. But the benefit of having these links images down here is that you can actually, if I wanted to change them, I could easily do that. And then also having them not be embedded in the file allows the InDesign file to be much smaller. When they're embedded, it makes the file much larger. So when they're linked, they're just referenced from a previous file. And let's see here. Sorry, if you hear bouncing, my dog has decided to play ball in here. Let's see here. Right here, we have this image. So I want to go in and I want to show you how we can add this same image from a file instead of this document. So this tool here is a frame tool. So if you're just laying out a document and you just want to say like, oh, I want an image here, a text box here, a text box here, and 2 images here, you can use this frame tool just to say that's where you want it. So it looks like with a little X through it, just as a placeholder. So here you can click File Place or Command D. So File Place, and then that will open up this file right here. So laptop Illustrator file, and then it opens up right here. So it doesn't fit to the box because it brings in whatever size it was created in. So you can do 2 things. You can either click here, and then that orange line up here will show you the size of it. And then you can constrain it down using your mouse. Got a little wonky. So you can see that. Or if you wanted it to be full size, same thing that I was doing with the text boxes, you can click on the right of the image and it will expand. Or any corner really. So this is beneficial. So you see how it's linked up here? You can then go to your links. And if you don't have these on your document, you can go to Window and then see the check marks are the ones you have available. So say I wanted to view my swatches, I could add that to here as well. And then add them as an element, but I already had links open. So right here is the laptop. If I wanted to edit the color of it, I could go edit with, and then it brings up this other dialog box. So if I edit with Illustrator, it opens it, and then I could select a new color for anything. We'll just do this. There we go. And then you hit save, go back to your InDesign file, and it automatically updates it. Sometimes it won't automatically update it and it will just give you an error. And I kind of wish it had done that to me, but it'll give you this error that says your file is no longer linked, and then you double click on that and it updates everything accordingly. And then, so these are linked down here. So if you click on the item, it'll highlight it in your links dialog box. So if I wanted to find something different for the same spot, I can click relink and it will open the file accordingly. So I want to change it to this Juice Space logo, get it open, and it adjusts in that same spot. So for text here, something I want to go over that's really great for copy that you can utilize is paragraph styles. So right now I have paragraph styles for this computer text, my footer text, the date and time that I have here, and then I'm referring to this text as header. If I wanted to add a new text box, let's start it over here. We'll bring it up here and say learning is fun. It's using whatever copy I typed in last, but I could easily change that to be the date and time with just a click of a button, or the computer. So it gets too large for that text box, so I'll still use that same double click on the right corner, and then it will open accordingly. So it's just an easy thing. If you know that you're going to reuse certain character styles or paragraph styles, it's super easy to add them. So say I wanted to adjust this to be a different font, and I'm just selecting random ones, and then a different color. We'll just, I can then, because this is no longer that character style, I can click this plus and it'll create a new character style that I can just say new style. And then click on this right here, and then it adjusts to that new style. So it's a really great tool to use. So I want to go in and show you guys how I created this document really quickly. It won't be quite the same because I'm just going to spend a few minutes on it. To start with, I added rectangles for color. So this is that top lighter blue. If I go to properties, I already had some of these colors in here that I added using the new swatch button color. So add that. I'll add another, and then that is that other blue. And then lastly is the darker blue footer. And I think that one's just inheriting from the last shape I made. So in order to get those waves that I had up here, I use my pen tool. And the pen tool is very similar to what you would see in other Adobe programs. If you click on a path, it ends up with a plus. So you know you're adding a point to the path that you've selected. So if I keep doing that. And then next, I want to make those curves. So I use the convert direction point tool. And this is really great. So I said, go back to that. I see these points, and if I click and hold, they start to have anchors on them. So that way you can get those curves accordingly. And I'm just going to do a couple more. Shoot, I might have lost. So sometimes if you miss the path, you might have to go in and add them again. See, I missed that one. Then go ahead and do that. And we'll just make this one. So not quite the same, but quick and dirty. So now I'll go in and do, and so you can kind of see it if I click W, I just have that background. But I took my frame tool and I want to make a spot for that computer. Same thing, I have the frame, file, place, or Command D, or Control D if you have a PC. I'm gonna select that computer. Again, it's too large, so I think it's a little bit easier to do this right click and then constrain it. So if I click Shift, Option, or Alt for PC, and then also Command or Control for PC, it will just constrain it to be that right size. And that way it all stays the same. Because if you don't click that command and you start dragging it, it'll only drag that mask frame box that it has. But if you do click command, it selects everything. Yes, it does. So it will, the final file, that's kind of the great thing about InDesign is that it only takes what's on that artboard or page. It'll warn you when you go to export to say that you have overhanging text or shapes, but I tend to just ignore those. So there we go. So we have the computer on here. And then I want to add in those logos. So I'll go into the frame. And then, so if I knew I wanted this to be the same size, I'll just copy and paste it. So you can do edit, copy, edit, paste, or right click, copy, paste, or Control or Command C to copy, and then B to paste. And then same thing, Command D or File Place. Go into logos, So the selected open, I'm going to do the right click and then constrain using those keyboard shortcuts. And then same thing, Command D, InDesign, and then, oops, this one might be in my downloads. And then I'll just constrain this one on its own. And then you can double, again, same thing, clicking on that corner will constrain it to be the right size. So one thing I really like about, you do not have to add a frame. That's a great question. You can just click Command D or File Place, and then you can go in and grab whatever image you have. So I have this one. And then it just kind of opens up as you can place it wherever, but if you do place it, so for example, if I clicked where this lightest blue is, it would take that and fill the whole shape with the image. Oops. So, or you can select out here and it just drops it wherever. Next, so if I click on both of these, so click on this one with the selection tool and hit shift and click on this one, it clicks both or selects both. And then you can drag it, and you guys see, if I wanted it centered, if I drag it and it hits center, there are guides that tell you it's in the center. So that's super helpful. And then next I want to add some text to the page. So I'm going to grab the text tool and make a text box. And then I actually have a Word document that has some text in it. So you can also place a Word document, so File Place or Command D right here, and it will import the text in there, but it doesn't format it. So then you can do, if I were to click this, that's the, again, beauty of paragraph styles. You can quickly update it to whatever you need it to be. And then lastly, I'm going to do some of these footer texts down here. I'll go in, I just want it to say text. I'm gonna say computer, I'm gonna constrain it. And then I know I want 4 of these, so I'll just copy and paste a few times. And then that, if I select all of them and I want them all to be on the same level, there's a great tool down here called Align, and then I can align them all to the center. And this is also something that is in Illustrator as well. And then also distribute from the center so that way they're all evenly spaced apart. The same thing, if I centered them on the page, that line shows up in the center. So that was kind of like the quick and dirty version of adding in those images. Let me know if there's any questions on that. Otherwise, I'm going to, yes, that's a great question as well. You can drag guides from your rulers. And then you can also show and hide your guides. So if you go to view guides, you can also lock them in place. So that way, if you selected a bunch of items, they would actually select to unless you lock them. And then you can snap objects to the guides, do smart guides, and then delete them all in the spread. You can also show a baseline grid, which is, okay, that's not showing up, but sorry about that. And then there's also show document grid, which is kind of those quick pixels that you can see. And like I said, unless you lock them, you can just quickly click on them and delete them. Oops. I might have locked them. It, yes, but you can just quickly delete them as long as they're not locked in place. So next, I'll go over a few of, I've kind of touched on some of the keyboard shortcuts, but I'll also post some of the keyboard shortcuts in the chat. Right here. And then, sorry, it's not sending at the moment. Sorry about that. I'm having a technical difficulty. Here we go. And then, so those are some shortcuts. I went over a lot of them, but just quickly so you can see, there for the tools, in order to get back to like your selection tool, it will be V, direct select is A, type tool is T. And these are just great to move a little bit faster. Keyboard shortcuts, you just click what, I could just select T, and then it will select the type tool. And then A will go back to direct select. V on my keyboard is the selection tool. I would be the eyedrop tool. M is your kind of rectangle tool. So they just make you move a lot faster. I've mentioned a few like copy command or control C, which would be copy, control, or command B, paste. You can also do command or control plus and minus to zoom in and out. Otherwise, I tend to just zoom in and out using my mouse or trackpad. And I've mentioned some of those constrain ones that you can use with your selection tool. And like I said, those are all in that link right there. The last item I want to go over is saving. To save a document, this one's already saved, but I'll go to save as so you can see it. You give it a name, location, and then there's a couple of them. The two main ones that I want to go over are the document, which is just your InDesign document, but another saving that's really important is the markup file. So this is an InDesign file that will work on any InDesign software. As you know, it's always updated. Some softwares are updated weekly, I swear. So you go in and the markup file allows you to work, anybody can open it with an InDesign of CS4 or later. So that way anybody can use your document. If you send it to a printer and they have an outdated software, they can still open it. So that's really important for that. The other things I want to go over are exports. There's a lot of different export options. The main one I'm going to show you guys is a print PDF, but you can also export to be JPEG or PNG, which are main image files, also a markup file. And I would think those are the main ones that you would want to utilize. So the print, it opens up a dialog box. You can show that you want to do all pages. I have 2 in this document, but I only want to do the first one. So I can do a range, or I could do, if I had multiple, I could do 1 to 5, just to do that range. So you kind of have pages or spreads. Spreads are what it would be like in a booklet or just the individual pages. So we'll just do pages here. And then I only really focus on marks and bleeds. So marks are for crop marks and bleed marks. So that way, if you are constraining it down to a certain size after printing, you have those marks when you're ready to export. So I'll just go ahead and export it so that way I can show you. right here. So these are those marks right here. So this is your crop marks. That's where the document would be cut at, and it shows you where that bleed ends. So there are those. And then the last thing I want to go over is packaging. And this is super useful. Packaging allows you, as I mentioned before, it allows you to take all of your fonts, images that you've linked to your file, because they're not embedded in the file, they're just links. It'll add them put everything in a folder, so that way somebody else, if it's a printer, somebody else working in your document, they can access those as well. So you can see these are the fonts within the document, the links, and then colors, etc. And then if I clicked package, it brings up another dialog box that says like it's creating a new folder, and it shows you what else will be in that folder. So it's giving me a copy of the fonts, the linked graphics, also that markup file, and then also a print PDF. And I like to have both of those in my package folders. So if I click package, and these are some of those dialog boxes. There we go. So now if I open up here, everything is neatly in that folder, and you could easily just give the printer the full document, or somebody else working on it, and they can access everything. You can send a PDF to a printer, but you might lose some of the quality. It just depends on how complex your file is. If it's just a poster, it's very easy to send a PDF. But if it is the question is the package applicable if you simply send a PDF to a printer, or only if you send an InDesign file? So if you send only a PDF, it works for just printing posters and such, but if you do have like a magazine or something that's much larger in pages, it's beneficial to send the InDesign file or the package folder file. So this helps so that way you can end up, if you compress this folder or zip it into a folder, you can send it off and it's ready to go, and there should be no real questions with it. So that's all I have today. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. There are a few resources that you can get from InDesign, from DoSpace. You can request a mentor. If you have a Omaha Public Library membership, you can access their Lynda subscription. You can also link to Adobe Help and Adobe TV, and I'll add those links to the chat as well. Great, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for everyone who's joining. Thank you for all the great questions as well.